Welcome to the Action Shooting Show. Tonight I have Mr. Mike Ford with me. I'm Ryan Dixon, and we are going to be doing our after action report on the 2024 Legion Run and Gun. So we're a little, I want to say, behind. It's taken a couple weeks to get this, but life's busy and no one's paying us to do this, so family and other things come first. So I guess we're just going to get started in it. Mike, why don't we have you give a quick the match flavor of this? So Mike has been doing, correct me if I'm wrong, you've done every Legion since the very first. So this is the 8th year for Legion. I have done the last 3 or 4. I'm trying to think. I started the first year they shot at, I think this is my 4th one. I've done 2 5Ks and 2 10Ks. So, but Mike's been there from the beginning. So why don't you kind of explain the match flavor?
Yes. So Legion was the brainchild of a Green Beret officer named Trevor Graves and his friend, and they came up with the idea after shooting Matt Stennett's first March running gun that was held in Rock Castle. The whole idea was to create a run and gun match that was going to memorialize the men that have served in 5th Special Forces Group and give shooters just a taste of kind of what a day in a Green Beret's life could be. All within a run and gun match format. It's grown a lot over the years, from the first ones at Rock Castle to the move eventually to Dead Zero and on, and the stages have all been pretty amazing, something that you won't find other matches. Because of the association with the Special Forces Association and 5th Special Forces Group, there's a very strong military theme, and all the stages are generally to simulate some form of combat, that some sort of heroism, something above and beyond and extraordinary was done. And some case the individuals survive those acts of heroism, and other times the individuals that are being memorialized in those stages made the ultimate sacrifice for their nation and their brothers in arms. So the stages are unique. Sometimes you're shooting out of moving vehicles, or in the Rock Castle days, moving through caves, simulating clearing caves. The terrain itself is generally fairly challenging. They do a really good job of integrating in mental challenges, or what they like to consider kind of like their Kim's games, is part of the match. And in the original one, as they first started, there was like a little benefits and stuff, but over the years, doing those games right actually has led to some real advantages on the course. It's certainly one of my favorite matches. I started and did the first few years as a competitor, and then as I got to get know Matt and some of the other ROs and some of the SF guys that were involved with the match, eventually there was an opportunity extended to RO. And since then, it is something that I plan my life around and I mark my calendar on. And I know that Ryan, now that he has that opportunity, it's the same thing. Not only is it the familiar and wonderful running gun family and ROs, but the reason for being there has never been greater. And being able to just kind of dip your toe into supporting and seeing what the Special Forces Association does to support active duty, military, retired, Gold Star families has been an absolute honor. So the last few years, we continue to set records at what's being raised at this match for the Special Forces Association. I believe last year was over $25,000, and this year I believe it was over $30,000. And all that
39,000, almost like very just shy of $40,000. So,
yeah. And the amazing thing is, because the way the Special Forces Association is run and the people who admin it and make it possible, every dollar of that goes to directly support these military personnel, active, retired, and Gold Star families, the wives, the children, the spouses that are left behind. So it's just an incredible event to be able to come and bear witness to. And, over the years, we've made a lot of friends. We've now lost some friends. But, yeah, words really cannot sum up what this match means to those who have been involved with it and have been there since the beginning. So, yeah, I don't think I can really do anything greater except for just say, if you haven't made it, please come out sometime. It needs to be on your bucket list of matches.
Absolutely. It is it's a very heavy match. I think I say that whenever I talk about this, because you are memorializing these people who have given their life for you. That's kind of, I don't want to make it sound like it's a bummer. It's a very fun match. Everyone's very happy and upbeat, but there's still a lot of that somberness to, the shooters meeting in the morning, and each year, the last couple years that you've run with a dog tag from somebody who has given all for their country. So you kind of memorialize them with your run. It's a very neat experience. So so that's kind of the main gist. Divisions wise, you have two different distances. So you have 5K and 10K, and then you have light fighter, which is whatever you want to carry. There's no real criteria for it, as little or as much as you want. And then you have operator. Used to be called tier 1. I think they're calling it operator now. And that is is it 55 pound, 45 pound, or 55 pound?
It's 45 pounds.
Not counting
your primary web gear and your firearms.
So my computer's running a little slow. So you're carrying a lot of weight, to say the least. So that's the real men's division. Mike did the operator this year, as he does every year. I did last year. I did operator. I really do enjoy it. I really wasn't trained like I wanted to be this year, so I was kind of a sissy, and I did light fighter. Just still a tough match even with light fighter, but not as tough with all the weight. So Mike kind of mentioned the Kim's games. So for those not familiar, it's kind of, I found out recently, it's kind of got a double meaning. So there is a Rudyard Kipling book called Kim, which in it there's a game or that the kids play to quickly memorize situations. I read a little bit of it a long time ago. I haven't finished it, but the whole idea is that they show them something, and then they get away, and then they come back. They have to remember what's there. So that's kind of the idea behind the King's game, is that it's a quick memory, but it's also an acronym for keep in mind. So so they have that kind of stuff, but the last couple of years they've really stepped up the I don't want to say mind game, the intel game maybe, and this year was no exception. I think if you watch our last year video, we felt like you really needed a cell phone to compete last year. It was really hard to take notes or remember everything that was going on. I'm not saying that a cell phone wouldn't help this year, but I will say, even though I took pictures of a lot of stuff, I did everything written down, and you could easily complete this, I think, without a cell phone. So the big thing this year, and I'm going to show it, and I think I have better pictures of this I'll put up, is you are kind of running. So this is Operation Serpent Strike. They had basically 3 different teams, and then each team was broke up into different cells, and each of those cells then was Mike. Just so I just showed a picture of it, Mike, and you're blurry, so they can't see it. But I have a picture of it. We'll put a better picture up. You're muted, Mike. So there There was some noise, so I muted you real quick.
Admin privilege.
Yeah. So yeah, you had this, and you were tracking two different teams with a bunch of different cells on it. And the way that they did it, and I've got some pictures we're going to put up here, kind of post, is throughout the course, they would give you different intel. There'd be like a sign that would have, and I got my book here, it may say A31, this is, or Alpha 31, this is Alpha 32 and Alpha 33. Building 100 is secure. So however you wanted, whether it was on this map, whether it was in your head, they gave you this to work on. You had to track what was going on with these different teams. Each of them had different objectives. They told you at the beginning which direction they were going to be clearing their different areas in. And you wanted to track that. And with that, different areas, they had different questions. So, for instance, you got to an area of the course. We'll kind of show it when we're doing the walkthrough. And they ask you a question. If you were able to answer that question correctly, you could go underneath the rope area and go down a pretty easy to travel path. If you didn't get the question, you had a much either further or harder train to go through. And they did this something similar last year with the intel. So having the intel was an advantage, or on certain stages, you would get, like our stage, we'll get to it. If you had the answer, the stage was way easier to shoot. If you did not have the answer, it was going to be a lot tougher. The last stage was the same way. So really interesting way to do it. Again, if you had a cell phone, you could work from that. I kept track of, and this was based off a friend of ours, Nick Hansen, kind of suggested this way. I basically made little tabs in this booklet, and each team, I would just write down the intel in their thing. So I have my red, and then I have my blue, and I have my green. Each of them had a different section, and I was able to track what was going on. I did make some notes on here, crossing out what was cleared and that sort of thing. But I would say this year it was certainly doable without a cell phone. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, very doable as long as you are organized in your note process.
Yep. So I think we'll just start going through the stages, and we'll kind of describe what's going on. I'm going to open up my phone here because I want to read the stage, what the who they're for. So stage 1 this year was in memory of Shannon M. Kent, Jonathan R. Farmer, and Scott A. Wirtz. And if I'm correct, Mike, the Farmers, his family was out there this year, correct? The Farmers were one of the families going around. They had a handful of kids and the wife and handful of kids came through. They were really, really awesome. They shot well. They were just seemed like great people. So it's awesome that we can get these families out here and help give them a good time. They've gone through a lot, obviously losing their husband, father. So that's stage 1. Stage 1 this year. Do you want to describe stage 1? We'll just kind of jump back and forth so I don't do all the talking.
Yeah. I'm going to do a little lead up to stage 1. So right out of the start line, as you run, there was some intel, and then they dropped you into a creek bottom. And so you ran through this creek bottom, then had to go up a really steep scramble to grab an item out of a bucket. They kind of did like what they do at Heartbreak with a little bit of an accountability token. And then you came into stage 1, and you gave the accountability token there. So at this stage, you walk in, and someone is simulating like a point of contact within a village. So they walk you into their house. They make you leave your long gun outside. No matter how much you try to bargain with them to bring it in there with you, they weren't letting you do it. And so you're standing, or then they'll have you sit down, and so you're sitting across from them, kind of making essentially small talk because something's going to happen. And then all of a sudden there's a simulated wall collapse and IED blast. And with that, you have to pull yourself out from underneath the rubble, go out, grab your carbine, and then the point of contact, or RO, starts feeding you information on targets that you need to shoot. So if you watch some of the videos that some of our fellow running gunners have done, they set up in this bay that was probably about 25 yards deep, maybe 30, 40 yards wide. It seemed wide to me in the moment.
It was wider than it was deep for sure.
Yeah, and so inside there they had steel throoms and then tons of cardboard, shoot and no shoot cardboard, based on your color. There was white and brown. So as your normal competitive shooter, you're kind of like, oh, what's going on here? So they start feeding you, hey, you need to engage all of this particular target. It was throoms first. You're kind of back central in the bay. There's several racks of throoms. They're hidden by these cardboard torsos. Some are shoot, some are no shoot. So you're trying to engage them. Really, the best course of action would have been to just run up and about muzzle punch them. For me, I was early in the day, and so I see brown, but in that flash, I didn't really notice any pasters, but I just saw brown, and I'm like, so there's at some point I'm probably going to be engaging cardboard. So I never went farther up. And so to quickly hit some of those targets, I even dropped down, just right down onto my stomach and engaged. Popped back up, went back over. They had you dump rifle at a certain point, and then they started calling out steel that you had to shoot with your pistol. And so now you have to move to get in position to shoot these steel. At the same time, you're kind of moving through this field of cardboard torsos, and once you engaged all steel with the pistol that they had called out for you, you were done. I guess if it would have been later on in the match, it would have answered my question of why does none of this cardboard have any pasters that I'm just quickly noticing. But I just figured earlier in the match there's going to be some cardboard that was probably like a high value or something that I needed to shoot, just because you didn't have like a great view of everything in the beginning. Really, what it was just set up the chaos of combat. You don't know who your friend and foe is, and in the situation where the people being memorialized, they were in Syria, if I remember, and had a suicide attack against them while they were standing on a street. So this was definitely that simulation in terms of, hey, you don't know what your target is, you don't know who your threats are, but you're trying to sort through the problem. And as a competitive shooter and gamer, it made a lot of sense to, hey, just run up and muzzle punch some stuff. But at the same time, if you're trying not to get sucked into a situation, which is kind of real life, you can't get sucked into one thing. Even if you're a member on a team, you can't allow yourself to get tunnel vision. Then you have to kind of work around the environment that you're in. I think I was like 80 some seconds. I think the stage win on that was like 60 something, where someone actually did what the fastest way to handle it was. But a very challenging stage, and a lot of very good shooters were at my time or even higher. Even some people that were semi-pro, pro 3-gunners at some point. So very challenging stage. Most legions start out with some sort of stage that you are drinking from the fire hose, and this was that stage this year. What was your takeaway from that one, Ryan?
The same thing. It was fun. I somehow induced a double feed before I even took a shot, and it took 30, 40. I mean, everything's going on. I cleared it in the stupidest possible way. I mean, it just took forever to get in the fight. So that was not great. I shot pretty well after that. I mean, I noticed the targets, but didn't really even pay attention whether it's pasters or not. I went pretty late on RO day, but I just kind of shot what they told me to shoot. So the throoms weren't bad. They were at a decent distance, so as long as you could hold steady, you could shoot it. But very, very fun stage. And I mean, when that went off the wall, I mean, that wall fell. It cracked me in the head because I was not expecting the wall to fall in on me. So really fun way to start a match. That creek was warm enough. It wasn't too bad, but the creek was like very soupy and muddy. Like if you didn't have your shoes, if you did not have your shoes tied tight, you were losing a shoe in that. I mean, I'd step in and it would sink down. I mean, I'm glad I didn't have a ruck at that point, because 45 extra pounds, like I would have fallen probably a couple times. So, and it got deep. I mean, it was almost up to my waist a couple points, when you'd sink in. So, again, if you don't have good gear, if you don't have good guns, they start getting wet, can have a bad day. Or if you're not protecting your guns like you should be, you can have a bad day.
Yep.
So
after stage 1, they kicked you out, and you ended up running a gravel trail, and it wasn't very long before you came up on stage 2. So, Ryan, do you have the information for stage 2?
Yep. Stage 2, let me read off who this is for. This was a really, really fun. This is like a good example of like a good Legion. I mean, all these are good Legion stages, but stage 2 is in memory of Aaron N. Holloman. And so this one you came up and they took your non-dominant hand, so my case, my left hand, and they put a strap around it so that you're up like this. Before they did that, they gave you a tourniquet and a piece of plastic gauze, or a piece, not plastic, but a piece of gauze and plastic. So on the start beep, you had to put a tourniquet on the right leg of a Rescue Randy, and they had a line drawn, so you had to get it up above that line, high and tight. You had to crank it around a couple times and tighten it. After that, and they told you, okay, that's good. You had to, and that was hard. I mean, you weren't quite one-handed. You could use your other hand as best as you can, but when you're down on the ground and stuff, you got a rifle around your neck. It was not as quick. It felt like it took forever, honestly. And then you had to get your gauze out, flip it, get the whole thing out. And they had a wound simulator. So they had a little wound, open wound, and blood spurting out of this thing. And you got to shove every bit of that gauze into that wound. Now, it's blood simulator, so you're getting blood all over your hand. I mean, so by the time you're done and that thing's shoved in there, your hand's got all kinds of fake blood on it, so it's sticky. From there, you had to, it was pistol next, correct? You drew your pistol.
Yep.
You drew your pistol, and you had eight targets or something like that. I think you double tapped them. A handful of targets you had to double tap. Once you got done with that, you holstered your pistol, and your rifle was already hot. They had let you make your rifle hot before you started. So from there, again, you still got something on your arm. You got to lift up your rifle, and you had a handful of targets that you had to triple tap. So generally, in Legion, if there is a paper target, it is 3 rifle hits, 5 pistol hits. I guess from, I think we've mentioned it before, when they first put this match on, Matt Stennett, the match director, started talking these Green Berets. He said, well, obviously it's not just 2 anywhere, like is most matches. Like, how many shots are you taking on people? And their response was however many it takes to neutralize the threat, which is great, but you can't simulate that in a match. So he said, okay, well, what's the average? And apparently the average was 3 rifle or 5 pistol hits was generally what it took to get the job done. So that's kind of a Legion thing. It's not across the board all the time. Steel's usually 1, but sometimes you'll double tap stuff or have to shoot something and then come back. So that's the end of that stage. They take it off. You're able to, unload and move on. It's the shooting was fairly close. I mean, it was nothing real technical, but with everything else going on, wet, slippery hands, rifle, either you had to use your other hand to support, or I've got a pretty small rifle. It's not the lightest, but you can just tuck it up into your shoulder and shoot it fairly steady one-handed, So I had a good time on that. How'd you do, Mike?
I was a little slow. Got the tourniquet on right away, and the RO told me that if I did not pack the wound right, that I'd have to start over. And so I literally, unrolled and packed it, one thumb at a time, just like you're supposed to get it good and deep in there. I probably could have gamed it, but at the same time, like, you don't know how calibrated the RO is to letting you game with, can you just kind of pull off a wad, and even though it's unrolled now, just stuff it in, or do you really need to keep doing the actual textbook way that you pack a wound? So looking at how fast I was moving, and then looking at the stage times that won that one, I probably could have gotten away with a little game packing, but at the end of the day, I packed it like Ryan was sitting there on the ground bleeding. So shot pistol and rifle very quickly, and only tossed like 2 extra rifle rounds on for possible of being unsure. But I shot pistol and rifle 2 hands. I brought my pistol up and kind of just supported a little bit sideways with my chicken wing, and ran across the targets with 2 hands, so it was very quick doing that. And then rifle, I just was able to sit right in front of my magazine well and ran 2 hands there. So shooting was very good there, but I did lose a lot of time packing it the right way. But excellent stage. It's a very Legionist stage, and we're starting to see some of this wound management stuff at other matches that we're doing. It's good. I'm glad that we're doing it. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on 2.
Yeah, and the blood definitely changes things, because I mean, my hands were a little slippery. I did notice my grip was, it was a little bit different getting a good grip, with a slick hand. So I thought that's a neat thing. So from this point, if you're on the 5K, you're kind of shooting across. I'll have a map I think we'll put up there. The next couple stages are the 10K only. So from there, you went into some fields. You got something to say, Mike?
Match.
It's the man's match.
10K, the man's match.
And honestly, if you didn't do the 10K, you really missed out on the next stage. But you went through some fields. You did get into some woods, some kind of tight, brushy woods. Not awful. There's not a lot of hills at this at Dead Zero. It's not like any crazy hills, but the terrain can be very challenging because there's some very thick woods. There's a lot of wait a minute vines. There's a lot of briar patches and stuff like that, and just thick, dense brush that you kind of have to just plow through. So this wasn't too bad, but there was a couple thick areas. After that, you did get onto some trails. You headed down to 3, and I'll let Mike take 3. This was definitely a cool stage and worth shooting the 10K for, because this was a first for me. I don't know about Mike, but this was a first experience for me.
This was my first time on a Mark 48. So the folks over at FNH USA.
What? 1 second, Mike, because I'm a bad person. I forgot to say who this stage was for.
Yep.
So this was Michael Mansour. We want to memorialize all these guys, so I don't want to forget that. Now we're going to go on to talk about shooting a Mark 48, because that's the crowning gem of this stage.
And just as a side note, Michael Mansour, if my understanding is, he was a SEAL that was on loan, and he seems to be an absolute legend in the Special Forces and SEAL community. His name has been brought up multiple times on media like the Sean Ryan Show and other groups, and just seems like he is an outstanding individual. So it was definitely an honor to be able to memorialize him at this match. So we'll move on to the Mark 48. FNH USA was gracious enough to send out some of their employees a Mark 48 and a lot of ammo and links. And so every competitor on the 10K got a 10-round belt. And so you started your stage with a Mark 48 down on a bipod ready to rock and roll. And it had a Elcan on it. And there was a steel torso target out silhouette against tree line, probably about 60, 75 yards away. Actually, it might have been closer to 100. And so
closer to 100.
As soon as the timer beeped, you dropped in the prone, pushed the safety off, and you held that reticle dead center, and you let it rip. You got to ride it, and it was a blast. My first time on that platform, and the recoil was incredibly mild. The whole time the belt ran through, I was just watching it, the reticle dancing on the plate. It never left. That was pretty amazing. So quickly jumped off there, and this stage was pretty cool. They had a mixture of different types of targets, some up against the tree line, some slightly out, some smaller ones about halfway between the tree line and you. And the way this one worked was from every shooting position, you got to shoot, I think it was 2 shots. And so there was multiple shooting positions set up across the back of the hillside where you were at shooting down. And there was like wall barricades, barrels, just kind of a mixture of things. And so the way that they had the target count was if you made a hit from every single position, you just shot from each position and ended on the far side. Where it got complicated was if you dropped a shot, that meant since you could only fire 2 rounds from every position, you would have to go back. So it was one of those where you were definitely balancing your speed and accuracy because you got to get those hits, and there's going to be some fast shooters out there. But at the same time, you can't afford to drop. Otherwise, you're going to drop very quickly on your placement. I was fortunate to kind of balance that out pretty well, even though I was pretty tired and I didn't drop anything. The unique thing, though, was because the shooting course and the way it was laid out was as you were moving across that back, your perspective on the array was changing. The targets that seemed closer to you were spaced a certain way for you to track. What have I previously engaged? What do I need to engage next? Changed as you went. So it was definitely you had to be observant. If you just looked at the next position and just hauled to get there, then you would probably end up eating some time trying to figure out what target you were going to shoot next. It was an excellent stage. I love these type stages. What'd you think of it, Ryan?
Yeah, I really liked it. I dropped, I think, 2 shots. They had some really small ones, and there was really nothing wrong with that size except that and it was more the narrowness. I was shooting different ammo than what I was zeroed for, which is kind of shame on me. I just didn't have chance with life to get out and zero that gun, and I was hitting a little bit. I basically had to hold to the right of what the target was. So it took 2 shots, 2 misses at those little ones to finally see where I was hitting. That I was hitting off to the left. And once I did that, I adjusted. I was fine. But the thing about each of these positions, they were a good 15, 20 yards away from each other. So a miss meant you had one, you had an extra 20 yards. I mean, that's 2 or 3 seconds pretty easily. I agree with Mike. The Mark 48 was really like, this is a 30 caliber belt fed machine, open bolt machine gun. And it was, I mean, like Mike said, if I missed many shots off that plate, mag dumping it, I'd be surprised because that reticle just kind of hung out right over top of that. And it was a lot of fun. It was surprisingly like you'd expect, a 30 caliber open bolt machine gun to really just be hammering. And it was pretty tame. And again, thanks to the FN people, they were out there. They kept that machine gun running. I don't think I heard any issues with it not running or being reliable. From what I've heard, open bolt machine guns, that's not necessarily the case. Like, they can be a little bit finicky at times, depending on how well they're maintained, who's running them, ammo. So, obviously, FN knows what to do to keep those things running. So that was very cool. So, from there, you head on, still down some paths at this point. You're not, you're still on regular paths, and you're headed over to stage 4. Stage 4 is, it's been a similar course of fire has been there the last couple years. And I guess the best thing you say is this kind of a burn them down stage. So, first, let me pull up my thing on who this is for. And I'm sorry if I'm clearing my throat a little bit. I'm getting over a cold. This is Benjamin D. Tiffner. And this was a fast stage. So you started with a 30-round max rifle round. So they've mandated had to be 30 rounds or less in your rifle. Pistol was however you wanted it. If you were this match, I don't think we said this match you can run hot. So if it was hot, however you showed up. If not, if it was empty, it stayed empty. On the beat, you ran down this path to the left, and you kind of continued around, and every rifle target that you saw, you put 3 rounds into. 3 rounds, 3 rounds, 3 rounds. And they said until your rifle ran dry, then switch to pistol. I'll tell you what, you're running, you're shooting, and it's all like, this is all muzzle punching distance, just right there. That rifle, 30 rounds went up like real quick. Like my bolt locked back, and I'm like, holy crap, the stage is not even halfway over yet, you know? You draw your pistol, and then as Legion rules, it's 5 rounds in every target, so you get in. And I think, because I put a 30-round or 20-round pistol mag in, you had a pistol reload. So I had like a standing reload on pistol because, I mean, it was a lot of targets just right on top of it. So once you finished up with that, you were done. You know, you had, I forget how many targets there were, but man, it was a fast stage. I didn't shoot it probably nearly as fast as I should have, but man, if you were a good shooter, you could have blown through it. So Mike, what are your thoughts on that stage?
Yep, they do something like that every year. In the years past, they've often done like a friend-foe identification type deal, but something very similar. Yeah, that 30-round mag went up in smoke really fast. And like, you know, some of those targets you're actually slowing down, and you know, the whole thing was you really didn't need to post up. They were that close. So even if you just slowed and just a slow walk, you know, just pause enough to take one extended step, you could clear those targets real quick and then keep going. And some of them were so daggone close, I didn't even use optics. I mean, you're blowing the pasters off with your rifle's muzzle. But yeah, went dry fast, transition to pistol, and then unfortunately the way it timed with my 21 round magazines was I did have one standing reload pistol. Seemed like a lot of people short circuited there. You know, I heard of multiple shooters that did things like 5 rifle, 3 pistol, or 5 and 5, and it just goes to show that sometimes the easiest things at Legion aren't necessarily the easiest when you're in fatigue and everything's going on. And the whole time you're still managing intel. I mean, the entire path that you've gone to, there's probably been already like 5 or 6 intel things along the way that you've had to
very easily 5 or more.
Yep. So yeah, you know, it's a fun stage. There's different variations, but we generally see something like it every year.
Yep. So from this point, like I said, these two were 10K only. You got to Exfil Alpha, and this was one of the first areas. Someone was standing there, and they asked, "Where is Team So and So?" or "What's so and so doing?" or "Who's at this building?" or whatever. And if you had your notes and you could find that information and you gave it to them, we'll probably try to show it. But you got to take this path right down here, this dotted line. Really straight. It was a kind of a little overgrown, but a paved path, you know, that you could get a ATV through it pretty easy. If not, you went all the way out here. As you can see, it's further, and I mean, there may be some trail there, but there's definitely some woods in there too. So having the intel was a huge advantage right there. So from there, you went on, and then you hit stage 5. Let me get the name for this one, and I'll let Mike talk about stage 5. So this was Amin A. Taha, Taha. I hope I pronounced that right, but yeah, he was a 5th Group Special Forces Airborne. So this stage, they've done some things kind of similar in this area, but I really liked it. Do you want to describe it, Mike?
Yeah, so the way they had this set up was there was multiple shoot boxes. You only had to advance as far as you wanted to advance, and they had it set up with rifle and pistol. So you started with your engagement with, I think it was pistol, and you had to shoot the pistol plates. And then once you engage those pistol plates, that cluster of them, then you holstered and transitioned to throoms. And so then you had to choose how far you wanted to advance because there was multiple arrays down along this creek bottom. So, like for me, I chose to advance to every single position. I know some people had chose to stop at the second one and not go to the third one, but with most things Throom related, why they are MOA wise a generous target when you are gassed and amped up from a stage and a run and everything. Yes, those little Throoms are pretty difficult, and I personally love them because I know how to shoot them. Something that we practice, and I think that every rifleman, especially modern riflemen, should understand their height over bore with their gun at different distances. And it punishes you if you don't. And it also shows, can you slow down and get your hits, even what feels like a relatively easy target array. So going up there for me was the right choice. I know some people didn't, and it punished them because it probably took 10 yards off the shot, 10 to 15 yards probably off the shot to move up to that next position. So I felt pretty strong coming out of there, knowing that for me, even though I hadn't been shooting as much this year, I felt like it was still a strong performance on that type of stage. So how'd that one go for you, Ryan?
Yep, I agree. I did pretty good on the pistol. Didn't drop a whole lot of shots. Yeah, I pretty much every time I could go up on rifle, I did. The thing to keep in mind is this is not in like a field. You are in the woods along a small creek. So it's not just you're not just shooting these targets in a field. There is some trees sticking up and other things. So I think moving up was definitely the way to do it. You just got less stuff in your way. You got less confusion. I shot it pretty well. I was a little worried actually when I finished this because I had kind of had my hydration pack off managing ammo. And I thought that I had left and forgot one of my mags. So I finished up this stage and I had a 30 rounder and half of a 30 rounder. And I'm looking and I'm thinking like, man, I am at stage 5 here. I've got 3 more stages of all potential rifle. Like, actually, no, I started that thinking I was out of ammo. And when I finished it, I had like 2 partial 30s. So I didn't even have like a full 60 rounds. And I was thinking, man, I am not going to have nearly enough ammo for this match. Luckily, I got in my pack. I found this extra mag that I had stowed in there. But that was the worst part of that stage for me. I was just kind of worried about running out of ammo. But very fun stage. If you struggle to shoot these, a week, I think last week, I put out a YouTube episode on some tips and techniques for shooting these. I think people make them harder than they need to be. Kind of like Mike said, it's the big thing is height over bore. There is some getting a steady shot, being able to hold your gun steady on it, but a little bit of research, or not research, a little bit of preparation ahead of time, doing your due diligence and taking some notes on that, and then a little bit of maybe technique on how to shoot things offhand quickly will go a long way in making these your most hated target to one that you love to see. I mean, I'm like Mike. When I see these in a match, I'm kind of excited about it because I know this is my opportunity to get some points on people who can't shoot them as well. So it's a good technique to have. And it's not just these. There are other small targets that sometimes you have to shoot close up, or paper targets with height over bore if there's no shoot. So all very good information to have. So heading on. So that was stage 5. Again, there was exfil Bravo at this point. So on the 10K, if you had your information, you were able to, we'll put this up here. Hopefully I can do a better thing. You could go down this way, or you had to go further around. So the path was easier if you had the information, which is a lot like life, I guess. You got the right information, and things are a little bit easier. So at this point, you meet back up with the 5K. So this would be the stage 3 for the 5K people, or stage 6 for the 10K people. And this was in memory of Earl F. Burke. Judging by his picture here, I'm guessing he was a Vietnam guy, because I'm seeing some tiger stripe and a cigar. I don't know. Modern Army, do they still let guys smoke cigars and look like badasses? I don't know, but I want to, this is goals, life goals right here. This was a really fun one. You started off towards the front of the stage, and this was kind of a retrograde. You started off by dropping, they had like a simulated mortar tube and a mortar, and you had to stick a mortar in there. It fell through, you pick it up and put it in. You had to do that 3 times. After that 3rd time, you drew your pistol, and they had 10 or 12 pistol targets out there on the creek. They had a similar stage last year. The pistol last year was a lot harder. I think the size and distance made it a lot harder. This year it wasn't like a chip shot, but it wasn't difficult. So you clear all that. Holster your pistol. I don't think they had any high value. I think it was just hot holster. Holster your pistol, and then they had a big tube, like it was simulating a M18 recoilless rifle. So you had to pick that up. You had to run up the path to kind of where you started. Once you got past a certain line, you could drop that on the ground, and then there was a tree there. I think most people probably use the tree to support themselves. I don't think you had to. Probably about 45 to 50 to 60 yards, they had 2 different plate racks with 2 plates on it each, and you had to neutralize those. I think 2 shots on each. So not a crazy difficult rifle shooting. I mean, if you know where you're hitting, you could hit them pretty quick and neutralize that stage. So I like the stage. It was fairly quick. You know, the pistol wasn't too bad. The rifle, you could get back up there and shoot. It was pretty quick. You know, running with the recoilless rifle was a fun extra challenge to that. So I enjoyed it. How about yourself, Mike?
Yeah, that was a fun stage. I enjoy those kind of hot and heavy things. I definitely have a lot of respect for the ROs that RO'd that one, because that RO had to be up there while you're doing the pistol and then turn around and sprint back. And like, I know in my case, like, as I was running the charging handle, it's like right when they came by me. So, you know, it's one of those where you're trying to be safe as a competitor, but, you know, at the same time as an RO, they're having to give it all for every competitor, so they don't lag behind and change their stage outcome. So I had Rob Stevens, great dude, great RO. So yeah, great stage, really enjoyed it. And it was something enjoyable before the slog.
Yes, let's talk about that. So before the match, this info had been released. Matt said, hey, there is going to be a land nav part of this. You really don't need a map or compass. This is not like they did land nav 2 years ago, and you had to shoot an azimuth and try to follow. You know, you got to a point, and they gave you the azimuth and the distance, and you had to shoot an azimuth and try to go, which was really difficult because it was some of the thickest stuff. I mean, there was no way to just go straight. I mean, everyone's like, oh yeah, you just shoot it to a tree, and then you walk to that and you go around. Your azimuth and shooting, like you could go 5 yards, and then you had to get around a tree or a bunch of trees and then go. Very challenging. This year it was just you go to a creek. Once you hit, they tell you there's a river right there and there's a sign, and you had to go 0.8 of a mile up that creek, following along however you want. You can jump back and forth. You could skip back and forth 100 times. You could go straight down the middle of the creek. Whatever you did until you got to that 0.8, and then you should hopefully find some ribbon to start getting back on the path. The terrain was challenging. I will say that was the difficult part. I run a GPS, so I run just a Garmin. When I got there, I just did the math, like said, okay, 0.8 on top of what I was. It was like whatever distance. I had to go to 0.28, I think, something like that. Let's say 5.28 or something like that. So knowing like kind of where my endpoint was on my Garmin, I stuck at the beginning along the left side of the creek. I knew I eventually had to be on the right side just by looking at the map, but I kind of kept the creek in view, but I took the easiest path I could. And there was times the creek was actually a little out of my view, but I knew generally where the creek was and just kind of took the easiest path. I think if you try to stay right on the creek edge or in the creek, it was kind of a fool's errand. It was a very, very difficult path. So, and I got into some sticker bushes and stuff like that, but generally it wasn't too bad until I started getting a little bit where it got hard on the left side, and I found a rock bridge and crossed over to the right side, and then stuck around that until, again, just generally knowing where the creek was until I got to like that 0.25 or something. And then I really kind of started heading in, and if you were anywhere close to it, you would see a bunch of ribbons and it was easy to follow. But even from that point, following up, like, it was really rocky. There was a lot of difficult terrain to navigate. So with ruck, it was probably even worse. But that section, that slog, you're not quite a mile, but once you add leaving that area, you're definitely at a mile. That mile was probably the toughest mile of the whole match. What did you think on that, Mike?
It was like that path was selected by a hobbit that was trying to find his way to Mordor. That was rough. I ended up crossing the creek fairly early on because I knew we needed to be on the right side of the creek, and I found some place with a little bit of a stable bottom, which was pretty good for a pack. The big thing is I'm 6 foot. You throw 6 foot, a backpack on, all that kind of stuff, and essentially I am trying to move through this brush and handle getting through like holly and everything else. And so that just was kind of a nightmare. It's just when you bend over, the pack is still too tall. Nothing fits. So, yep, it was fun. Not really, but it's part of the game, and so just kind of slogged through.
Yep, I enjoyed it. I know when we were at stage 4/7, and people came up and they were absolutely smoked. Like they were done. And we were pretty close to the end. So once you got through that, you didn't really have a lot left. So we'll go on. So once you come out of that, you had to go underneath a barbed wire fence, which Legion typically has a section where in the past we've had to go under barbed wire fences 2 or 3 times. And even with a hydration pack, like a real thin hydration pack, it's low enough. You pretty much got to take it off. You got to toss your rifle under it. Like, to get through it is quite the challenge. So once you got under that barbed wire fence, you did come up into a cow pasture field. So overgrown grass, CRP type stuff, but not terrible. You'd slog through that, and they have some big poles and stuff leading the way. There was, again, we actually could see there was an intel right before you got to our stage, so we could kind of see people stopping, kind of preparing for that. But you came down a little hill, crossed a little bridge, and then you were at our stage. And I'll let Mike describe our stage and the shenanigans that got in if you didn't know the intel. But this was Daniel W. Weingart, who our stage was memorializing. And this was a fun, sometimes challenging stage to RO, but a very comical stage to RO at times too. So, Mike, why don't you kind of describe what happened if they did not know the intel question? You are muted, and I did not do it that time.
Sorry, I think my phone's getting a little hot. It's getting a little glitchy. So the way it was set up was we asked you if you knew the current location of one of the teams you were supposed to be tracking with intel. And if you got it wrong, then you got to wear a glove with
The
fingers
love
super
glove.
glued together. Yeah, super glued together, and then later we end up having to wrap the glove with tape just because super glue is not going to handle all the stress of people's hands on it. And so then you had to shoot with your
on your dominant hand. Yeah, but it was on your dominant hand.
Right. So by then, people are tired. People are barely holding it together. And it was definitely showing in the way people were handling the situation. So it started with some, let's see, there's 5 targets. There was kind of like 3 on the left side and 2 on the right side of this little glade that you were going to shoot down through. And they weren't too terribly far, but the trick was the rifle, when you shot it, had to be touching this tree. Well, with the rifle touching the tree, you could not see all the targets from one position. You had to switch to the other side of the tree. So this meant there was a whole lot of people like going back and forth, and that was pretty comical. And then once you did clear the rifle, then there was 10 pistol plates that needed hit and engaged and knocked over. And they were pretty generous, 10 by 10, but they were probably spread over like a 20-yard distance from left to right. I mean, it was a pretty good spread on the array. It was comical, painful. It was, yeah, it was a lot of things. A lot of people were getting sucked up onto the tree, and so they were putting their ejection ports against it and causing their guns to malfunction. Um, just trying to work through that. People weren't following instructions on how to handle the rifle when you were done with your rifle portion. Guess who tried to drop it onto their sling when it's supposed to be dropped onto the ground? This guy. So
yeah, that was specified that you had to ground the rifle onto the ground, and we even kept saying like not on the tree, because that's the other thing. People would try to like lean it against the tree. Well, they're leaning against the tree until they fall, you know. So, or in Mike's case, some people tried to sling it, safe on the ground.
Right. And so probably what would have been a stage win for me ended up just kind of being like 3 seconds, I think, off the stage win. By the time I had to get my sling off and drop it on the ground. But hey, my bad. That's life. You don't shoot matches a whole lot. You're going to make some mistakes. And even if you are shooting a lot, you'll still make some. One of the big things is just to toss in a safety concern here is, folks, put your rifle on safe. When you're grounding a long gun, it takes no time. We were dealing with people grounding their rifles off safe. They were grounding them not up range like they're supposed to, or down range. They were kind of turned like 90 degrees up. It was just, come on, folks. You got to think a little bit about what you're doing. You saw the experienced shooters that had really good gun manipulation skills safing the gun as they were going from the left side to the right side of the tree. That didn't cost those guys any time. They were still the top shooters on the stage, but they were safe while they were moving the gun around, versus some folks were doing everything they could to move heaven and earth to have a fast stage time, and it wasn't even close to a winning time, and it was not safe. Obviously you want some experienced ROs there to try to keep people safe. And then dealing with a handgun with potentially one hand, or maybe be able to use one hand with like a finger off the other hand that's taped up. Be very, very careful, because your dominant hand is taped. And there's other matches that are doing this as well. It's not just Legion that are immobilizing your dominant hand. When you're drawing a gun, transferring it into the hand that you actually plan to fire it with, do it deliberately, do it with care. No one is winning the stage based on how fast they transition the gun into an actual shooting position. It was based off of how well you're shooting once you actually got there. So there was definitely a lot of rough pistol. And there was a couple of shooters that the people running the timer really need to step up onto them to keep them from manipulating the gun in such a way that was unsafe and could potentially lead to a muzzle pointed in a direction other competitors were coming from. So be very conscious. Look at your target array and know that, hey, this is a natural terrain stage. I know where I came from. I know where other competitors are coming from. I just need to keep the muzzle of my gun pointed in the direction of the target array. Sometimes you don't have 180 degrees with a 90 left and 90 right of center line. But overall, we were able to keep that stage safe, keep it running fairly well, except for a little bit on the end. It was just with having to put the glove on and off and ask the intel questions and stuff. Even though it should have been a relatively quick shoot stage, we still had a lot of people timing out. So it definitely took the whole RO team to keep that stage flowing. And like the last shooter on the 10K day, they actually had to finish it with flashlights. It was a long course. That 8th mile land nav challenge sucked a lot of time out of people's run. But yeah, fun stage. Always good stuff to practice. What did you think of that one, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree with everything Mike said. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we didn't catch every one of them, but if we saw you ground your rifle without the safety on, you were putting your rifle on safe before you moved on to the pistol. So if you think not safing it's going to save you time, I will not let you finish the stage until that thing's on safe. So it's going to cost you time. And then it's like Mike said, the safety on an AR, I mean, in most modern rifles, but especially an AR, I don't care if it's a 90, if it's a 45, it's a 55, 50, whatever. By the time you have unshouldered your rifle, that safety can be off or on. I mean, it's before you even put it down, that thing can be on or off. So there's really no excuses. As Mike said, I've RO'd a long time. I'd like to consider myself a pretty decent RO. I do not crowd a shooter. Generally, I give them room to do their thing, keeping it safety. But Mike knew when things were going on, because if I'm right on top of you while I'm ROing you, that should be your sign that you're probably doing something wrong. And we had a couple where I was right on top of them because I was afraid I was going to have to, stop them from doing something dangerous. We want everyone to shoot these matches. Everyone has to have their first match. I would argue that your first competitive shooting match should not be a run and gun. As much as I love this sport for everybody, shoot USPSA or IDPA, three gun. Three gun's really not a great first one. Steel Challenge, USPSA, a single gun sport is probably your best bet. If you can find a rifle only match, that's a good one. Learn kind of how competition works before you get thrown into the deep end with something to run and gun. If all you have is run and gun, we'll get you through. We'll do what we can to get you through a match, but we're adding fatigue and so many other things onto it that the safety aspect of it really needs to be subconscious. So if you struggle with putting your gun on safe just at the range, you're not going to remember to do it when you're tired and under a lot of extra stress. So maybe there's my public service announcement. If you're new to competition, the safety of your guns, shouldering, turn the safety on, take it off, put your safety back on, that kind of stuff, being able to manipulate your guns without even thinking about it. That stuff you can dry fire at home. Just be that's subconscious before you come out to your first match. It'll make your match a lot more enjoyable. One thing Mike didn't mention on the rifle array, while they weren't very small targets, the very middle target, they had very sneakily placed where a pine tree kind of cut it in half. So while you had a full-size IPSC, you actually only had half the width of the IPSC to shoot. So that was certainly an extra bit of challenge to that. So fun stage. We had great fellow ROs there. We had Ashley Edgecombe, who I think was proposed to with ring pops about 10, 15 times throughout the weekend. So she's apparently Mormon and married to a lot of men now. Good time. We had her boyfriend out there. He was helping out. Doesn't competitive shoot, but great guy to talk to, and was a huge help throughout the weekend. So for someone who didn't even shoot the match, I appreciate him coming out and helping us out. So from there, you pretty much had gravel pathway, a couple more intels leading out that you had to take until you got to stage 5 on the 5K or 8 on the 10K. That was Brett E. Walden was the person we were commemorating there. And this was a return of the horse from Legion. So they've used this in the past. I've not shot off of it because I think that was Rock Castle days. Or if it wasn't, it was 10K that I didn't do before I started doing the 10K. But he started off with pistol, had a handful of like 10 or 12 pistol targets. This is late in the match. People are tired. People are low. They've just done the hard land nav. So they were what I would consider pretty generous sized targets. Really not that difficult. If you're smoked, if someone really struggled on those, I definitely understand it. But there's nothing challenging. Just shoot these 10 pistol targets, 10 or 12 pistol targets. Holster up. I don't think there was any high value or anything like that. Run forward a little bit. And then you hop on a horse, you make your rifle ready, and you had, I think, 5 or 6 targets out there. Now, this was another stage. If you knew the intel that they asked you, they showed you a layout of the targets and what distance they were at. So you knew what you were shooting at and how far it was. If you didn't have the intel, you just had to guess. Always it's good to know the target distance. I think the furthest one was 326 or something like that. They were none of them were real small targets. We've talked on this show before. Most of the run and gun size targets with a modern, 5.56 shooting any decent speed ammo. Most targets you can hold on to the head of or slightly over top of and get your hit. I think that was the case for this. Even shooting a 12.5, you could get your hit. So you were shooting off the top of the horse, so you may be able to rest the mag, lean forward a little bit. There was a couple different techniques. The horse did have some springs on the front, so maybe the real challenge of that wasn't the distance, but just getting in a good stable position to break your shot. And late in the match, and whatever, it rained on competitor or on one of the days or a couple of the days it rained / sprinkled, so that all kind of adds to the challenge of it. But really fun stage, not crazy to end the match with, but still a good challenge. You got an easy pistol because now you're coming up to somewhat of a difficult rifle part. So I don't know, what'd you think of that, Mike, or how'd you do?
I didn't do too bad. It wasn't a stage win. I don't think I really ended up with any of those this Legion. But it was still a fairly strong performance for me. I generally do well on these more intermediate rifle distances. It's really about trying to get fairly stable in a fairly quick order, knowing that you might have to make a couple makeup shots, but you're trying to balance that speed and accuracy. So it was a lot of fun. I liked it. And it was fun to have the horse come back.
Yeah, very, very interesting kind of barricade to shoot off of. So at this point, you don't really have that far to go. You've got, I don't know, a couple 100 yards maybe. You're running down through the campsite, and then you run to the finish line. This year, along with everything, when you cross the finish line, they checked you clear. They took you aside, and one of the start-finish people then had a series of questions to ask you. They were all on your intel. Where is this team? Who ended up here? Yada, yada, yada. I don't remember all the questions. If you had all the information and you answered it correctly, you got a Legion coin. I really regret not having that. I will post a picture on this because I was able to get one. I thought, again, if you wrote down everything that you saw on the course, verbatim, you could answer all the questions. You could do it, and nothing was real long. I mean, let me read a couple of them. I think we'll have posted some pictures. A21. This is A22 and A23. Building 201 is secure. It's not, you're not writing out paragraphs or anything like that. My handwriting's not great. As long as you can read your own handwriting, you could complete that. So you answer all the questions. You get a Legion coin, and did it affect your run at all? Did they give you any bonus time? I don't think there was anything like that this year. I just think it was the coin.
I think it was just the coin, but not completely sure. I never heard any final outcome on that.
Yeah, so very cool. Did you have anything to kind of add about that part, Mike?
No, it's just one of those things. If you need to be able to show your answers, but yeah, I think it was all fairly reasonable Kim's games this year. Phone wasn't a bad thing. Saved a lot of people by having a phone, but at the same time, it wasn't 100% necessary.
I had both. I took pictures and wrote it down, and most of my logic was, even though my phone is waterproof and it's in a bag, like a Ziploc bag, I still don't trust electronics. So if my phone got destroyed, I fell on it and destroyed it, I had a paper backup. That's one thing. Mike actually loaned me. He brought one of the DACA pouches. Magpool's like medium-sized DACA pouch. It is, I would not say waterproof. I would say water resistant, but very, very water resistant, because the zipper is an absolute nightmare. Like it's very stiff because it's got rubber or plastic that goes over top of it. So he had carabiners on it, so you could have it carabinered on your chest rig, kind of dangling. Like I had it underneath a dangler pouch. So like imagine there, kind of over top of your belt there. And what I would do, and I think it's what Mike said he did, is when you come up and you needed to write something down, you could unhook one of the carabiners, swing it down, unzip it, take your notes or whatever. Because like when I was on the course, the first half of the day I was out there, it was raining / sprinkling. And obviously at one point I'm going through a creek. You're crossing creeks. You're going through wet woods. So, I mean, you can see how ratty my paper was, even from keeping it in a waterproof container. And it was very soggy at one point. But if I would have just tried to keep it in like a Ziploc bag or in my pocket, the thing would have been completely useless. So, Mike, do you have anything more to add to this about the match? We didn't talk about what gear we used. Did you want to kind of go over that here?
So use my Everstock. I believe it's the Gun Runner that I've been using for years for rucking and stuff. It performed as expected. No complaints there. Again, Spiritus chest rig with dangler, and also with the DACA dangler. That worked out really well because you could even use it kind of as a riding surface. Let's see. And STAC inner outer belt set up. And my G45 that I've been running for years, and my run and gun rifle. This year I shot a lot of the course without the suppressor. Just the muzzle brake is flatter than the suppressor for muzzle control. Definitely regretted that on stage 1 because I realized I had my ear pro in jammed in well enough that I could not hear the RO telling me what I needed to do. So when I had to pause real quick and just pop one out enough, and then had some fun permanent ringing in my ears the rest of the weekend from that one. Lantac Dragons are pretty brutal if you don't have a good ear pro. So yeah, it's one of those things that probably be running more suppressed and or at least have it easier to QD on and off and not tucked in the top of my pack. Generally, I just have it tucked in the top of the pack for long range. But unless I get some electronic ears, I think it's now just time to consider it hearing protection. But yeah, everything performed well. This year, the weakest link in the gear was me. Just, hey, busy being a dad and all that other stuff, and just didn't get the practice that the match deserved. but still had a lot of fun. Placed at least on a podium, so no complaints there. But yeah, again, Legion's a fantastic match, and in the end, it's not about us. It's not about the competitors. It's not about the staff. It's about doing things and raising money for the SFA and other folks. So just glad to have the opportunity to help with that again this year.
Yeah, and Mike's a little being a little humble there. He placed second in the operator division, and he was third overall in shooting. So, which is, if you're shooting the whole course carrying 45, 50, 60 extra pounds with the ruck and all that, it's quite the achievement. So he shot really, really well. So I shot the match. I shot my 12.5, just kind of home built rifle. Got an AccuPower 1-8 on there. Thunder Beast Dominus suppressor. Unlike Mike, I shot the whole match with the can on. Maybe not as flat shooting, but honestly, that 12.5 with the 2-port brake that the can attaches to, it's really, really brutal without Ear Pro on it, or without the can on it. So I pretty much just, if I'm shooting a 12.5, it's got a can on it. Staccato P, that's what I've been shooting for. ALS belt, ALS holster. I think we've said before, if you don't have an ALS holster for running gun and they make one for your pistol, you're wrong. Like, that's kind of the holster you should probably be using for this. The automatic locking is kind of key. Chest rig, a little bit different. I usually use something like the Spiritus, like a different version of the micro rig. I've been using this older Haley Strategic. I do really like the retention, the bungee retention for stuff, especially when you're going through the woods. I've really kind of fallen in love with the GP pouches. I mean, I got extra bags in it. I got markers. I carried a compass in there just in case I needed that. It's been pretty handy. I don't typically, but I think this is a pretty solid chest rig. So been a big fan of that now. What else? That's most of my gear there. I didn't shoot nearly as well. I've not really been shooting or practicing, and my fitness life's been really, really business. So I've been lifting more and not running as much, which kind of affects my my cardio. I didn't die out there, but I probably didn't push as hard as I never really hit my stride with all the stopping for intel. I never felt like I hit my stride, and I finished the whole thing, and I'm like, I hustled on in, and I'm like, I'm not really, like, I don't feel tired. I don't feel bad. Like, I left so much time on the course, but I don't know. I just didn't have any drive to really push real hard. I did IRO'd in the morning, and so I was pretty late in the day, which tends to be, and for me, that's not really my best running guns. Most of my really good finishes, I've been out on the course early, and if you're running around ROing all the morning, it's kind of an excuse, but it's just not. I never have kind of the energy to do as well as I would like. But again, I didn't come to this one like, I just knew where my fitness and my shooting was at, and I came more to have a good time than to like crush it, So I shot fairly well and was a little slow in the running, so that's fine with me. Mike, do you want to give us your closing thoughts on the 2024 Legion this year?
Yeah, so closing thoughts on 2024 Legion was it was another excellent match. Matt Stinnett and the SF crew outdid themselves, and I'm really fortunate for the opportunity that I got to participate. And it's definitely going to be on my calendar for this upcoming year. So sorry, folks, I need to duck out and play dad. So thanks for letting me come and share my experience with you, and I'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for making that. Yeah, I'll finish this up here. It was an awesome match. I thought the Intel was done really well this year. I was very happy about that. I was a little overwhelmed when they were explaining it, but I think they did it in a way that if you paid attention and you did your thing and took good notes, it was very doable. Matt and the crew and everybody, I mean, there's always great ROs. Everybody who helps with this match is great. So it was a fun time. again, it's already on my schedule. It's the time's blocked off for next year, so I plan to work and run it again. Hopefully, I got more time to train for it. But thank you if you've stuck around with us this long. I definitely appreciate it. We ask that you like and subscribe to this. I'm really bad about saying that. Share it with your friends. We do this for free. We just want to help people. We want to give people an idea of what these matches are like and what they can do, what to expect with them. You know, if you're, you know, hopefully this is like February of 2025 or May or something like that, and you're like, man, I've heard of this Legion, I want to shoot it. What's it like? And you've watched this video, maybe our last couple years of doing these, and said, awesome, like I feel a little more ready for the experience. That's our real goal here. And regular competitors, you know, you shot a bunch of other here, and you kind of want to live through us. You had a little FOMO, and you want to live through us. Hopefully, we ran you through a match fairly well. Probably a little less misery than what it is to actually shoot the match, but who knows? Maybe me and Mike's voices is misery enough for you. So again, thanks for watching, and we hope to see you out in the range.